Suck it, nerds. How's it going, YouTube? It's Vengeful Shadows here. Before we get into the video about surviving the Spright format, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to everyone who watched the previous videos as well as any of the other videos on the channel. And please do consider dropping a sub to the channel itself, alright? Hours after the last Market Watch got dropped, like hundreds of cards literally got bought out that were mentioned in that Market Watch, which I'm super excited about, and I'm sure the person picking those up will be super excited as well. Don't know who it is, but huge shout out to you. And then the next day there's actually a TCG player direct order that seemed to be in place for literally insane amounts that goes from the past cards and stuff like that. So cards mentioned as well as relatively, similar cards to those natures bought out literally hours, if not the day after the last Market Watch was dropped. So guys, do consider dropping that sub and following all the other channels. But without further ado, we're here to talk about surviving the Spright format, okay? Now, if you keep up with the TCG, you are aware there's a huge new archetype coming out. It's called Spright. It's basically, it's actually really cool. It's like a little thunder archetype. We'll kind of show the people there. All right, they're actually the thunder, and then they're like darks, fires, all sorts of stuff for the attribute. So overall, really cool deck, really unique. And what's kind of like cool to the nature with them is they're all about level 2, rank 2, link 2 monsters, okay? So all sorts of way to bring out level 2 monsters, rank 2 monsters, link 2 monsters. That is what the deck is designed to do, and that is what the deck absolutely does and is phenomenal at that, okay? So what I'm just going to do here is go over really quickly the Spright because a lot of people are already very familiar with it, and then we're going to go heavily over cards that you will be using to survive the format that is that of Spright, as well as teching stuff against other Spright players if you're playing Spright yourself, and then cards you might want to be consider picking up, okay? Like rather that there are cards that have already gone up in price. This is not necessarily a Market Watch, but cards that you'll be seeing a lot of coming up in the next format, okay? And way to start things off itself is with the Spright starter, okay? And the Spright starter, quick play, essentially summons the Spright from the deck. All right, these are the ones they mainly play a lot of is the starter. They play the Smasher, which basically you banish a Spright from the grave to activate it, or it's at least it's like level 2 or something, and then you get to banish one on your board, banish a card on their board, okay? Quick spell card that gets added to their hand. We got the blue, which when it's summoned, which all of them have the effects if you control level 2, rank 2 monster, special it from the hand. Super insane, okay? So when he's summoned, you basically add a Spright deck to hand, okay? Jet, when he's summoned, you add a Spright Sparrow Trap from the deck to the hand, because this one's monsters, okay? Blue's monsters, Jet's spells and traps. Red is when they get on the board real quickly. So Spright Red, when it's on the board as a quick effect, when a monster effect is activated, you contribute another level 2, rank 2, or link 2 monster to negate the effect. Okay, then if you tributed a rank 2 level 2 monster, you can destroy the card that you negated. Okay, then we got Gamma Burst. That's not really playing the deck. Some people do play the Carrot, which this negates the spell cards instead of like the monsters like Red does. We also have Pixies, but I've not seen people actually play Pixies in the deck. It's just a way to summon out from the hand as well. Big hitters that we've been seeing overall in this Spright deck coming out is Swap Frogs. There's even been a huge increase in the ultimate price as well as common price of Swap Frogs because all the frogs are level 2 monsters that just summon out to the board, okay? And with links, you get to take the monsters, summon them to the grave like Ronin Tone, then you get to banish the cards like Swap Frog, bring Ronin Tone out, and you get to double dip again into summoning material, okay? Cards like Deep Sea Diva have been seeing huge play because you summon Diva, go Diva, then you get to immediately overlay or link with them. Then we will see some offbeat decks playing Nimble, okay, which is one sent to the graveyard. You basically get to special summon up to 2 level 3 or lower Nimble monsters from the deck. So you summon out the level 2s and essentially be able to overlay or link. Now with the Sprights themselves, cards that have come out for their boss monsters are Gigantic Spright as well as Spright Elf. Gigantic Spright, when you use the ability, you basically get to summon a level 2 for the deck, normally being the Ronin Tone, and he blocks card like the opponent from summoning outside of level 2, or both players from summoning outside of level 2, so they cannot Nibiru you, and that's why you're going to see players going into Gigantic Spright first to A, get an extra card like Swap Frog out from the deck, but as well as to shut down Nibiru plays, okay? Then we also have Spright Elf, which again, as a quick effect, you actually get to summon out monsters from the grave that are level or rank, And then, as well as the cards it points to, he protects from being targeted. Okay, so the monsters he actually points to are protected from targeting from the opponent's card effects. Okay, so that's really insane for Spright Elf. Again, I'm not going to really get into the combos of the deck, just mainly what it's going to do and how we're going to shut it down, okay, and ways to make it even like cards you might need in the future. They go into Halka as well because it's a Link 2 and they play a bunch of tuners, and then they totally go into the Totally Awesome, and that puts a lot of wall into the deck. They kind of like turn your turns off, as well as just setting up a lot for their next turn with the Toads and the Frogs. They also play the Sky Cavalier, Downer Magician, Zeus package, okay? So when they're not shut into rank 2 level 2s with the Spright, they're going to go into the Centura, okay? Hit you, it don't die by battle, your monster's going to be removed from the board, then they'll go down or into the Sky Thunder, okay? So that right there is the Spright core and what you're going to be seeing when you're playing the Spright deck itself. There's some Evil Twins that get played in as well, but we all know what those do. So overall, the first, and these are not all of them, we're going to go over quite a list of cards. So I just want to emphasize, you know, certain ones that do certain things. And the first thing we're going to have in the format are a bunch of hand traps, okay? And they're going to be in a variety of hand traps, and that's me. The big ones right here is going to be the Frame Gear Gamma, because when their opponent starts popping off with the frog plays and going into the gigantic Spright, you're actually able to Gear Gamma them there or Gamma earlier on, shutting that down and being able to bust out monsters yourselves for protection if it's not just turn 1, as well as it's a level 2 for the Spright users themselves to use. So some of the Spright decks themselves will be playing the Gamma, so if they're able to Gamma out early, it's another level 2 on the board that they gain as an extra resource, okay? And they're definitely going to play into that. And that is, immediately, if I'm correct, is a Spright Elf, because you only need one of them to be a level or rank 2. Infinite Impermanence is seeing a lot of play. People are even starting to play Crossout Designator, which is not mentioned here, but it's a card that is seeing some play in the OCG because a lot of people are playing the Infinite Impermanence to shut down each other's starting plays. And, you know, you can activate it from your hand when you control nothing, so that allows you to play it right out of your hand during the opponent's turn, shutting them down if they don't have a follow-up play. A lot of time you're going to need 2 or more hand traps in your opening hand to shut down a Spright player. That's why the deck is super consistent right now, okay? And another easy-to-have hand trap right out the rip we're going to be seeing is Effect Failure. And again, this is why a lot of players have even been playing the Crossout, is because so many people are playing such a large amount of hand traps that it's really essential to get your combos off, because a lot of people are playing a good number of them. Okay, so the top 3 I think we'll be seeing to counter Spright is going to be the Effect Failure, the Infinite Impermanence, as well as the Frame Gear Gamma. Okay, next up on the list of more hand traps, okay, we're going to be seeing Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, being able to shut down cards like a Gigantic Spright when they get to the activating, so you get to destroy them off the board when they search out for the cards. We're going to see all sorts of good plays with Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. If you are not new to the channel, then you are aware that I love Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Super amazing card. I think this card should have been played much earlier in like formats that have been in the past, but never too late to run it, right? We're actually getting that ultimate rare print of it, which is going to be kind of nice to have. I have a bunch of secrets, so I'm definitely going to be picking up ultimates, okay? But why this card's good is so if you're going second, your opponent controls more cards than you do, you get to pitch it from the hand. And if you're playing Sprights, or if you have cards in your side deck that you side into Sprights, you don't need the extra deck, so you just put Sprights in there. What you do is you show 1 card from your extra deck to the opponent. They banish all copies from them, okay? And that's banished. It's not sent to the graveyard. You're not triggering their effects. You're banishing their copies, okay? And you get to keep your copies. So if you're a Spright player going against other Spright players, Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries is a must-have in your side deck, okay? So if they go first, you popped off going first, or even if they're going first, you side it into there, okay? You Ghost Reaper on their turn, you win that matchup. It's really easy, really simple. Some people target the Gigantic Spright with the Winter Cherries. Majority of people hit the Spright Elf with the Winter Cherries, because that is going to be the extender for them, as well as the protection for their creatures for the targeting, okay? There's also other targets like the Totally Awesome, Hulk, and then we got Zeus. If you can see that they're going into a Zeus play with the Downer Magician, you can hit the Zeus out, but that's not necessarily the optimal play for the Cherries. You kind of want to cut off the resource generator generator, which is the Spright Elf. Next hand trap up, which is just seeing huge popularity right now, is Dimension Shifter, and that's because you get to play it. Your opponent can't, like, all cards are banished, so if you open it, you can pitch it. Spright doesn't care itself if you can kind of tutor around, like kind of having to send cards to the graveyard set up for next turn, normally shut the opponent off, and it's really amazing against the tier elements that are coming out, which are going to be the contenders to the Sprights. Okay, so if you're not playing Sprights, you're probably going to be playing tier elements. And Shifter really cuts them off their resources because they mill cards to the grave. Oh, what's going to be important too, and I'll mention a little later, is there's actually a Herald of the Pure Light, which is a rank 2 exceed. And what I've seen played is they'll Shifter on their first turn. Their extender actually got negated, so they had to emergency go into Pure Light. Pure Light added Shifter back to the hand, so then they could Shifter the tier elements 2 turns in a row, thus shutting them off from the rest of the game pretty much early on. Next up on the list of cards are definitely going to be your turn 2 cards. The other hand traps, these are kind of like, okay, you're going turn 2, okay? And they've set up a board. You couldn't stop them with hand traps. So what do you do now? Okay, well, the first one is Dark Ruler No More. They might set up a Totally Awesome. They might be protecting Sprights. They might have all sorts of negates on the board. Okay, so Dark Ruler No More is going to turn off the Totally Awesome. It's going to turn off the generators of the quick effects that will happen to summon out more monsters from the graveyard if you kill them. So you're just shut that off and then start going on with your turn and then disassemble their board. They're probably going to have a follow-up on the next turn, but at least you got to play. If you can't negate the effects, we also have Triple Tactics Talent, so if they get to negate a card or get to get a quick effect off, you can draw to take a monster or hit from the opponent's hand, so generate more of your resources to keep combating. Worst case scenario, we can try to evenly match them. Alright, evenly match has been a huge contender coming up, a lot, very, very much played, kind of in the OCG side decking a little bit. Just being able to wipe a board clean is really nice. And then last but not least, on this exact list, we got the Forbidden Droplets, an amazing card. I don't think it'll be played. Cards getting sent to the graveyard will have card effects going off in tier elements. But overall, I think just negating the opponent's board entirely is going to be the way to go as far as going second cards. Okay. Also on the list, these are more like kind of continuous traps that will help turn 2. Again, cards, you set up and then you activate on your opponent's turn. If you're going first, you activate on turn 2. And that's kind of like a little bit more sleeper tech cards as well. And that is to start off in the ban played on. Now, if you weren't around a little bit earlier in some of the Yu-Gi-Oh days, you might not know what some of these cards are, but for like the Exceed days, some of these cards really messed with decks when you were trying to Exceed summon. So, and the ban played on is one of those very specific ones. Prices on Ultras have kind of increased, and that is a continuous trap that says neither player can special summon monsters with the same level as those they control. So since they're running only level 2s in the deck, they're locked into one level 2 on the board, making it impossible for them to Exceed summon, link summon, do any sort of summon, because they only play level 2, so they only get one of them, okay? So neither player can summon monsters the same rank as they control either, and which is insane. So if they already control Exceed monsters, you can't summon a second Exceed monster with that rank, so it's a little cherry on top of the effect. Next up is Stygian Dirge, which reduces the level of all monsters your opponent controls by 1. Again, this locks them out of their rank 2 plays. Certain monsters like hand traps can be turned into level 2, such as Ash Blossom and the Cherries and all of them, so they could theoretically still go into their plays with the Dirge. That's why first on the list, in my opinion, would be in the ban played on. Next would be Dirge, because that really does affect the gameplay against them. It's hard for them to play around it. Summon limit's really nice. They extend a lot. They do way more than 2 summons in a turn, so that will cut them off. If you're playing a deck that you can be okay with summon limit, that's definitely a card you can play. But again, there's better options. Honestly, this is a favorite that I've seen, and I think a lot of people would find this a favorite, is Deck Devastation Virus. You basically attribute a monster 2,000 more. That's dark, easy to do. As you wipe their hand, you get to see their next 3 cards they draw and wipe them too, because they're probably going to be level 2 monsters that have flow attack. And Deck Devastation, super good card, nice high rarity cards like the ulties. So I think we're going to be seeing that side decked in some time in the future against this, and it will definitely shut down the Sprights as long as they're not able to immediately recover with the Ronin tokens, okay? And another fun one we've seen is Power Filter as a spell. Neither player can special summon monsters with 1,000 or less attack. So if you're playing a deck that can get around that, it's decent for them. Some of them have over 1,000 attack, so it's not necessarily like a staple go-to. There are better options, but Power Filter is a pretty cool card. Alrighty, and then, so one thing I wanted to say is, where does this put Nibiru? Okay, I'm in the boat that he's not going to be seeing a ton of play right now because Gigantic Spright essentially shuts off your Nibiru plays, and they basically go into it on their third summon. They summon a monster, go into Spright, detach, you can't use your Nibiru, and then they get to summon a toad from the deck, or a frog, swap frog, to dump a toad. And that immediately shuts off your Nibiru play. So unless you're gammaing, imperming, veiloring, anything like against the Spright, your Nibiru is not going off. And half the time they start off their play even sometimes with the Spright right on the board. So again, even if you're trying to negate it, they can even negate your hand traps against them with the red Spright, unless it's like the imperm, okay? So Nibiru, it'd be cool to see it be able to eventually affect them, but I don't think we're going to be seeing Nibiru played a ton against the Spright variants at all, because again, Gigantic Spright specifically pretty much shuts off the Nibiru unless you're dumping a bunch of resources to try to negate that, which isn't optimal. It'd just be best having a second hand trap to negate something else and then using the first hand trap to negate something a little bit more optimal. So I don't think Nibiru is going to be being seen going forward, which is kind of like at the understanding. Alright, and last but not least, some of the cards right now, I think that will be needed in Spright decks if you're a Spright player looking to play it. Alright, we have real cheap versions of the Sky Cavalry out right now from like the most recent kind of reprint sets. We even have cheap Downer Magicians. Zeus right now is kind of potentially going to be on a rise back up. We see some secrets slightly more right now than they used to be, but overall cheap in comparison. We even have cheap ultis for this card, so definitely be considering grabbing some of these cards if you're going to be playing the Spright deck, especially like if you're playing budget, you can get really budget versions of these. And then Herald of Pure Light has seen a price increase, okay? So this card is like $15 right now because that combo I told you about earlier, you pitch the D-Shifter immediately, so you shut off the opponent's tier element plays. If they have a hand trap, they're probably going to use it, and then you can emergency go into Herald, detach, add your D-Shifter back to your hand, and that will re-allow you to shut off 2 turns of tier elements, okay? Which is insane. Alright, so keep an eye out for Herald of the Pure Light. It leads to a lot of really cool plays with Spright, okay? Guys, that is the video. If you do enjoy it, please, please, please do consider dropping that sub. Again, some of our other videos that we were kind of showing off were popping off with the Market Watch. People really had good feedback to that, and for those who did, I really do appreciate that. We're definitely doing more Market Watches coming up soon. I just want to talk a little bit about Spright, some cards to be considering with them coming into the meta, okay? And do consider following. We got a Twitter as well as a Twitch, both Vengeful Shadows tag, but as always, guys, thanks for watching, stay safe, and suck it, nerds.